The Battle of Adwa, an Ethiopian victory that against the current of colonialism. Adwa, March 1, 1896, military clash at Adwa in the north central of Ethiopia between the Ethiopian army and the Italian forces. The Ethiopian army's victory checked Italy's attempt to build an empire in Africa.
Adwa is one of the historical incidents that promoted both Ethiopians and black Africans to struggle for their independence. It ignited a very good, it inspired people who are living in the tyranny of colonial rule to fight against and to topple down that tyranny and to liberate themselves. There were four important points that helped Ethiopians to achieve that remarkable victory against the industrial nation that equipped with results of benefits of fruits of industry. The first one is military capacity. The disparity between the Italian army and the Ethiopian army was not that much significant. They had about 60,000 well-equipped army. At the same time, on the other hand, we have about 25,000. The gap is not that much visible. Next to that, leadership quality of the period. The emperor during that particular period. The third very important point was leadership quality of the military elites.
It was fought between two countries, that's fact, but the perception was that Africa is dark and so it should be colonized. That perception was lost. Italians lost the game, and at least it's sort of racial demarcation. That demarcation was for good forgotten, and so the victory is not only between Ethiopia and the battle between Ethiopia and Italy, but between black and white race. Well, now there is lots of argument which goes around race. There is no race, there is only humanity, and so we are talking of power relations of the day, because it's difficult for me to accentuate race as an issue, because humanity has only one race, and it started from Ethiopia. So when you see that, it is more the power relations of the day was Africa has to be colonized, and that was broken. So the victory of Battle of Adwa gives us great pride that all humanity should live in peace and freedom. That is the result of Battle of Adwa.
At the same time, there was a deadly disease called malaria, and they failed to cope up with. Eventually, the medical technology was completely changed because of the industrial capitalism. They were able to discover quinine, and the death rate dramatically reduced. Next to that, their military power was completely augmented. They were able to just furnish their army with modern firearms and ammunitions that could break African resistance. One of their writers said, "We have what they do not have." Therefore, they were able to crush down, they were to belittle down strong African medication, firearms, training, organization, transportation, a number of industrial fruits. The revolution of industrial fruits changed military composition. They were proud of their military composition, military and something, therefore, and used to undermine the resistant capacity of Africans. They planned to crash down Ethiopian resistance within a fraction of days, and thereafter they wanted to declare colonial empire that could serve their interest. The Chile Treaty was an indicator, because they wrote the treaty and they forced Ethiopian ruling elites to accept whatever the cost. This was why, while Ras Mokonnen was just bargaining, begging to follow the diplomatic approach at Rome, the Italians started to penetrate Asmara to Adigrat and the like. Not only that, this was the military method, traditional military methods Ethiopians used to employ during that particular period also helped. One, they chose very dry season, but what we call this is military, this is war season for Ethiopians. Number two, the situation was not that appealing. The pre-Adwa situation was not appealing for Ethiopia to confront against the strong equipped force, because there were people who had a grudge against the ruling elite because of the state expansion, usually employed by military force. State expansion brought a number of dissatisfaction, and that inspired many rulers to hold a grudge against the ruling elite. Then next to that, there was a famine which completely ravaged animals and production capacity of the pickup approach than opting for military option. It was the Italian approach that forced the Ethiopian army to engage in the military confrontation.
Basically unity, if you are united, you can defeat any type of difficulties. If you are not, then victory is far away. We've seen it in the second round. They were not prepared. They had their own power squibbling, and so they lost the game. Initially, the conventional war, we lost it, because later on we were able to sustain the struggle through guerrilla fighting, and so the conventional war, we lost it in the second round because they came with airplanes and master guards, and so we were not able to stand that, confronting them direct. But through the last 5 years of their stay, they were not able to control the whole country because they were facing the guerrilla fighters all over the country. And so when you see it, the situation was not the same, and the preparation was also not the same. In the Battle of Adwa, we had about 7 years of diplomatic row. After the signing of Uchale, both sides were trying to gain the day of the translation problem. Finally, Ethiopia won with the first battle of diplomacy. And the second one also, the Italians were penetrating deep into our political situations, and they were trying to coax some local leaders, to side them. There also they lost the game, and so Ethiopia stood fast, and we were able to defeat the enemy because we were united.
Particularly during the engagement, during the war, 75% of the war was fought by the women group. As many writers like Raymond Jones, Berkeley, and the like, even Ethiopian local writers like Paulos Nyonyo, Sergio Haile Selassie, Gebre Selassie, who wrote the period of Emperor Minilik, Glaudius Ararai, Tegle Tsadik Mokra, unanimously agreed that 75% of the role was played by the women group. One, logistics supply completely monopolized by the women. Number two, inspiring songs. The empress provided a mission. She gave mission for every lady to motivate her own, her husband and the nearest by individual. As a result, the song was very inspiring, and it motivated the warriors to display heroic engagement in the battlefronts. Number two, the traditional approach, deception, particularly a man called Basha Abalom played significant role. He deceived them. Wrong information displayed by a group of spy group given mission by the emperor that deceived the enemy force. The enemy force completely deceived and belittled down, particularly at the Battle of Ambalag and Mekele. Wrong information played by the spy group, particularly by Ethiopian side, played significant role. Next to that, military experience. Particularly, they, instead of relying on the firearms, ammunitions, javelins applied in the battlefront, traditional what we call it equipments, war equipments, what we call knife and etc. applied by the enemy. This was very, very, very tough for the enemy force. They failed to stand against the Ethiopian army. Next to that, there is also commitment for national issue. People who hold a grudge against the emperor were given assignment to administer the rest of the country, particularly Abba Jifar, Ona, Gaki Serecho were given assignment to administer the rest of the country, while the ruling elites were confronting against the enemy force. They were given an assignment to continue the country. Whether we died or not, the country must continue. And you have to govern the rest of Ethiopia, we'll die for the nation. This was division of labor, preparation, commitment, they displayed gallantly fought against the enemy force without just any sort of fear. They paid costs for their nation. And a number of factors. The undermining Ethiopian army. Ethiopians had experience of fighting for centuries. From 1540s, beginning from 1540s, the Ethiopians had experience about ammunitions. It was not simply ordinary farmers who were brought from the farm, didn't join the enemy force. Farmers at the same time warriors, soldiers, who were equipped and had very good experience about how to use guns. And the gap was not that much significant. A number of factors, we can just jot down a number of factors related to Ethiopia, with the Ethiopian side, at the same time the Italian side.
Well, at least history is food for thought, so we have to learn from our past, and for me we live with memory and hope. We are accommodating yesterday's memory with tomorrow's hope, and so today's reality is engaging with yesterday's memory, and so what we learn from our mistakes and result, the mistakes was manifested after 40 years. We are not prepared, and we lost the game, at least the conventional war. But the first round we were able to win because we are united. And so today we're learning from yesterday's unity to defeat our enemies, whatever type of enemies, it could be poverty, illiteracy and the like. And so we're having lots of enemies, so not only fighting human enemies, but at least there are lots of economic and social and political problems that we have to confront. And so if we could stand together, at least we can reach our destination. And so in that sense, the youngsters of the day should go back to 125 years and understand the spirit of it, the environment of it.
The victory had further significance for being the first crushing defeat of European power by the African forces during the colonial era. Traditional warriors, farmers and pastoralists, as well as women, defeated a well-armed Italian army in the northern town of Adwa in Ethiopia.
There are fruits of Adwa, both internationally and locally. Internationally, it made Ethiopia a kind of global circumstance. The victory was not only the black people, the victory belongs not only to the black people, but it also belongs to the white, because it inspired them to change their policy. The new policy was designed. Indirect neo-colonialism. Colonialism ceased to exist after. It helped the white to design another strategy to continue their legacy. It helped to design new plan, new lesson, new international lesson. For the black people who lived under the tyranny of colonial rule, it helped, it inspired, it gave a lesson for those who are living under colonial rule to fight against for the independence. It was after Adwa that the black elite, like people Garvey, Marcus Garvey, and etc., started to mobilize black people to unite against colonial rule. Black movement started. Pan-Africanism was started as a result of the root, as a result of the seed put by the colonial. Adwa. This locally, it helped us to keep our psychological dignity. We don't feel, we are not ashamed of. We are not ashamed of, because many African people were ashamed of being lived under the colonial rule. We didn't taste that shameful scar. We didn't have that shameful scar of living under the colonial rule. We didn't, our forefathers were not sold on the market as animals. That experience, we have psychological dignity that we need to keep for generation. Next to that, we need to keep our country. Whatever the difference, there were differences during that period. Whatever the difference, the country belongs to all of us. It is not a country of some rulers, it's not a country of some party, or it's a country of some kings and somebody. The country belongs to us. We have to pay the necessary cost, whatever the difference. We have to come together to deal our common enemy, to deal with our common enemy, to deal with our common problems. Next to that, we have to struggle for independence. Justice, equality, fraternity that we inherited from the Adwa generation. We should never give up our struggle for equality, freedom, and whatever is the cost. We need to give necessary attention to get rid of any kind of tyranny, any kind of mistreatment, any kind of subjugation. And we have to struggle for our independence and liberty. We have to keep our country, and we have to just make something more.
It's a beacon of freedom for all who lost their freedom, and so not only for black, but all over the world. Especially for the black, it is a sign and symbol and icon that they enshrine and they endear dearly. So they cannot forget Adwa. It is a spirit for their struggle, all of African countries were liberated, especially in the 60s. All of them remind Adwa, and especially the freedom fighters were directly or indirectly connected with Ethiopia. And so the impact of Ethiopia is extremely important when we are talking about liberating Africa. For African American, it is still alive, we can go back to the Nile issue, which was problematic when President Trump took the leadership in handling the GERD issue, but his position was sort of childish, and we see solution came through Congressional Black Caucus. They stood firm and they declared that it has to go back to African solution rather than meddling in our affairs, and so they stood for us, and that shows you the impact of Adwa is still alive when it comes to African Americans, and so they cannot forget it. It's just part of their beings, and so it's strong. The worry was from our side. we are just awakening slowly to understand the impact of Adwa properly.
For the last 25 years and something, totally the country is thrown out as a garbage. Everyone was talking about his ethnic group, some minor interests. The generation failed to have a role model who speaks about the continuity, the freedom, unity of the country. And the ruling elite currently who are ruling the country need to work strongly about patriotism, about unity, freedom, equality, fraternity, and etc. We need to work on the generation. There is a kind of gap created because of political conspiracy, followed by some untrusted people who were working to dismantle down our country. Now this group, the one who is ruling the country, needs to work, one, on the generation. Patriotism must be promoted. When you promote patriotism, you could get another patriot who could die for his own country. When you promote patriotism, you could get another party who fight for freedom. And promoting patriotism is one of the ways to keep continuity of the country, to keep continuity of patriotism, and etc. We need to work on the generation. There is a kind of gap created. Political, not only just, we have to respect ethnic identity. Ethnic identity must be respected. This is not something political right. It's natural right. One has to learn with his own language. One has to be judged by his own language. This is something natural. But we need a country. We need a big country to entertain our differences, to entertain our political rights, to entertain our economic rights. We have to create democratic leadership. We have to create democratic politics that could entertain differences. We have to create a kind of democratic leadership that could allow competition. Election matters in the leadership. We have to create democratic type of economy that could address everyone, that could reach everyone. And at the same time, we have to create democratic society who couldn't bear mistreatment, subjugation, and etc. We have to work on the generation.
The outcome of this battle ensured Ethiopia's independence, making it the only African country never to be colonized.
The spirit of Adwa is for the whole continent and beyond, and so we have to engage them. We're lucky now that we have a museum in Addis Ababa, which Ali, and museum in Adwa, museum other places. All signage, which takes us from Addis Ababa, from Harar to the battlefield. We have to leave signage, which reminds us the Battle of Adwa, and so that attracts our tourists. So who might tomorrow, the day after, might try to have adventure tourism and trek the way from Harar to Adwa. Our youngsters are marching to Adwa. That's a good sign. You know, the last 8 years they were doing it every year, and so this is a good start, at least to involve the youngsters in the memory of the past.
Okay, for all African countries, you know, there was a theory, Darwin theory and something theory. Do you see, the whites could classify us, largely the whites could classify us subhuman. Blacks are not human. There is still they write a book as as equating blacks as obstinate creature, which is equal to donkey or other creature. They classify us between human and other animals as something subhuman. This completely reversed by the Adwa victory. Adwa asserted that all human beings are equal, irrespective of their color. This is the landmark that helped other African countries to struggle against their colonial masters because they declared as human beings. They appeared to justify themselves, they appeared to accept themselves as human beings because of the landmark that's set by Adwa as the victory of Adwa. It was after the victory of Adwa that many countries started to struggle against their colonial masters and achieve their independence. Therefore, it sometimes, even though there was an African Day, some blacks consider this as an African Day, that Africans were declared as human beings against the theory developed by colonial masters that equates African as human, subhuman.
The other aspect of it, Ethiopia has to struggle is poverty. How to organize to fight poverty is our major task. And so the youth, we have enough resource. We have water, we have soil, we have manpower. We could feed ourselves easily. And so, what's the problem hindering us not to feed ourselves should be underscored and properly discussed, and we have to come up with a solution. We were lingering for the last 100 years because of drought, famine, wars, diseases and the like. These are the three, especially drought could easily transform to famine if we are not careful. So any time drought could come, it is climatic, but at least you can fight famine if you are prepared well in advance. So we have to prepare ourselves, because our hectic climatical change, we have to be careful. We have to predict tomorrow's reality, and so if there is drought, then we have to prepare ourselves not to transform it to famine. This is our major worry for the youngsters to solve. The other aspect is our political vacuum that we are facing. So we have to discuss thoroughly to come up with the philosophy of power legitimacy aspect of it. As I see it now, we don't have any strong power legitimacy philosophy, and so we have to evolve that. That could come only through discussion and becoming aware of our resources. These are the two. For me, you cannot disengage politics with economics, and so these are the two ends that we have to discuss. And I hope the youngsters could come up with better solutions, because life is for them. And to have united Ethiopia and strong Ethiopia, they have to come together and sit together and discuss to come up with better solutions. We can have 101 solutions, but then we have to prioritize, and by and by we could come up with a sort of collective psyche, collective memory that we have to depend on for solving tomorrow's problem, today's problem, and at least hoping for better tomorrow. So the youngsters should go back to the source, to the Battle of Adwa, and ask themselves, why did they win? If they understand the secret of why they won, then I hope they can come up with their tomorrow's problem easily.
Adwa turned Ethiopia into a symbol of freedom for the black people globally. Adwa still stands as witness to what ordinary Africans can do when they come together as farmers, pastoralists, women and rural people, workers and artists. They are able to score a decisive victory against global colonialist forces. The Adwa victory led to change of governments in Italy. Due to public protest and failure of his colonial policy, Prime Minister Francesco Rispi resigned. Negotiations between the two countries resulted in the capital of Ethiopia. One of these key components was unconditional acceptance of Ethiopia's independence and sovereignty. News of the African victory spread out throughout the world. Adwa turned Ethiopia into the symbol of redemption and freedom for the black people. Marcus Garvey, Du Bois, Bob Marley, George Padmore, and others drew inspiration from the African victory. Adwa connected black people with Africa's ancient glory and future hope. While most of the Africa had come under colonial rule during the so-called Scramble for Africa, Ethiopia remained a sovereign nation with formidable army and a strong monarchy. In October 1896, Italy signed the Treaty of Addis Ababa, recognizing Ethiopia as an independent state.
In Beehive there is a queen, which is extremely important, but the queen itself cannot produce honey. She needs the whole entourage of the working bees and supporting bees. So to have honey, you have to come together, on not only the leaders. Mainly the leaders are also reflections of our society's reflections, wherever it is. Leaders are born through the society's reflections, and so they are part of us. So this synergizing aspect of it should be well taken. In the Battle of Adwa, the single soldier who was not sung for lost his life, and the leaders were also lost their life, definitely, but at least losing life, they are equal. There is no hierarchy of losing life. It's just division of labor. One could organize and lead, and the other fight for their causes. And so, if you don't see holistic aspect of Battle of Adwa, we cannot appreciate it properly. And so now, after 25 years, we are celebrating it full month. That gives us time to ponder and reflect. And luckily that we are also the month of Black History Month, February, and so we can combine the energy and make the two together to have international impact. So it is it's becoming affecting every individual, not only the leaders, but because we are feeling the spirit of it. We are not against the Italians, at least they came and they tried their best, but they are with humanity, and all humanity evolved from Ethiopia, and so they are also part of us. But at least we are talking of power game, power relationship, and that was lost.
The generals of that period were very big people, and even themselves are what we call our academic institutes. Not only simply military generals, they are academic institutes. I mean military academic institute, military institutes, because they were born in war, grew in war, and died in war. They know what is war. We fail to write the philosophy of that period. They had their own philosophy of war. But for example, Alula Abba Naga. There is a proverb about Alula Abba Naga. In Amharic, Alula Abba Naga yedagat ላይ ኮሶ እንዲሁም ያስፈራል እንኳን መተኩሶ. This is, already recognized as war general, maker of war. He knew how to make, and he knew how to conclude it. The academic institutes, military academy. Not only I consider them as not individual or general, as military academy. ገበየው በሞት ያድዋን ስላሴ ጠላት አረከሰው ገበየው በሞት ግባና ቀድሰው. He belittled down, he ravaged them. Within a fraction of a day he killed about 2,000 enemy force, and he liberated Adwa. He was considered as a man who could sanitize, who could sanitize by sprinkling water and something, He was totally recognized as sanitizer against the enemy force. There was also a proverb about Balcha Safa. Gabayo bimot tataka Balcha መድፋ ገላባጭ ብቻ ለብቻ they know how to make military force. There is also another proverb about ባልቻ ሳፎ ደጃች ባልቻ ሳፎ የጦሩ ገበሬ የጠላቱን ሬሳ አሰጣው ላውሬ የጦሩ ገበሬ you know he was a farmer of war. And I have a very good appreciation, high appreciation about these people. They were not only simply military generals, they were military academy by themselves. They knew how to train their soldiers. They knew how to just produce commitment, heroism, how to install love of nation, military commitment, military discipline in their own army. And they were very big people of the period. They paid necessary, they paid all the cost, and they helped us to live in the, what we call it, you know, in the freedom. They helped us to entertain freedom. For every one of us, for the sons and daughters of the Adwa generation, for all black Africans, and for all people of the world who lived under the tyranny of colonial rule. Happy 125th anniversary of Adwa. And please, all daughters and sons of Adwa generation, whatever the difference, we can entertain the difference. Difference is not something bad. Difference is a way to grow. Difference is diversity. We can entertain our diversity. We can entertain our question. We can entertain our difference when we keep the integrity of our country. We have to give priority for our country. Thereafter, we can solve everything. We can address our questions. Then let's stand together as what the Adwa generation did. We can make a miracle. They just changed the philosophy of the world. They changed the diplomatic relation of the world. They changed biased thoughts of the world because they stood together. Let's stand together and save our country, and we can entertain the difference. Let's promote unity.
But it was notable as it was the first victory by African country over colonial power and a scene as an inspiration for the Pan-African movement that would speed across the continent in the 20th century across the colonial powers. Adwa, the victory of the black people. Adwa is the sign of freedom and liberty. The victory against colonialism. Adwa. Ethiopia, one of the only non-colonized African country, land of origin for humankind and liberty. Adwa.
Sina ufihi manu male, minu numiu hindu emale.